How can ink under a sleeve turn into papers in my hands beneath marble lights? Why did I think a tattoo saying, "I love my ex the most," would be only a joke about my past, not the reason my husband walked out and changed our life with clean, cold rules? Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. I'm Ariadne Quill, 32, the receptionist who keeps a logistics office moving. I live with my husband, Caleb Mercer, in a tidy townhouse that looks calm when the kitchen light is on. Our wall planner hangs by the fridge, and our two mugs sit on opposite counters, mine by the kettle and his near the sink. I tell people we are fine. I tell myself the same when the rooms feel bright and sharp. Yesterday I came home with fresh ink. The line on my arm says I love my ex the most. I called it art and closure. I told Caleb it was a joke about history and not a real claim. He asked why a husband should read those words in his own home. I said adults can hold big truths. He did not shout. He carried a pillow to the guest room and said he needed sleep. The door latch clicked like a small stamp. Mara, my sister, texted that it was iconic. His mother, Elaine, sent one calm line about keeping the house steady for Nora's weekend. On the planner, a pencil note appeared, downtown 9:30. A phone alert blinked. Meeting, personal, and went dark. The printer warmed and spat a single blank page. The toner smelt like cold dust. I slid a cropped studio photo into a hidden album and told myself people fear what they do not understand. The kitchen looked like a stage I could arrange. I wiped the counter though it was clean and set two mugs where they always go. Mine by the kettle, his near the sink. Two mugs mean marriage. I like that picture. The wall planner beside the fridge showed neat boxes and light pencil. A new line sat there that I did not write. Downtown 9:30. I traced the numbers with my finger and said it was a bank errand or a shoe repair. I said it was not about me. Caleb came in with that quiet that shapes a room. He asked how I slept. I said, well, because well is a lid. He asked if I understood the words on my arm. I said they were art and closure. He asked why a spouse must read that line in his own kitchen. I said adults can hold big truths. He looked at the planner, not at me. My sleeve slipped and the ink showed, dark and neat. I love my ex the most. I said it was a concept, not a claim. I said, Rowan and I were history, and the phrase turned grief into design. Caleb asked if design should live where vows live. I said, design lives wherever it wants. He did not argue. He picked a different mug from the back of the shelf and poured coffee at the far counter. Distance can be louder than anger. I opened the drawer to find napkins and saw a thin binder labeled Utilities. It was too thick for bills, with plastic sleeves and tabs that looked new. A yellow sticky note rested on top, Bring forms. I closed the drawer slowly, like I was lowering a lid on a small box. I said we were getting very organized. He said order helps homes live. I said order is a hobby, not a life. Mara texted a string of laughing emojis and the word iconic. I raised the phone like proof that culture was on my side. Caleb said sisters protect sisters. I said husbands should also protect wives. He rinsed his spoon and placed it on the far edge of the sink, like drawing a line with water. I opened the fridge and set out the blue cup for Nora, because she would be with us on Friday. I told myself families calm down when cups are ready. I took a soft photo of the planner and wrote the caption, Busy Days, Big Hearts. The likes came slow, like snow that melts before it lands. Mr. Hobb from the HOA walked past our window and stared a second too long. I smiled through the glass. He nodded and turned his gaze to a flyer on the mail slot, as if paper could hide him. Caleb's phone blinked, meeting, personal, and then dimmed. I asked if he needed the car. He said he would manage. I said personal is a word for two. He said personal meant him. The small new key on his ring flashed, when he reached for his bag. He carried a pillow to the guest room without hurry. He said he needed sleep. The door eased shut. The latch clicked, clean and final. The sound felt bigger than the door. After he left, I checked my hidden album. The cropped studio photo sat inside, the angle showing ink and skin, not faces. I moved it deeper in the folder and told myself that meant I was being kind. I cleaned what did not need cleaning. A table wiped twice, a couch cushion smoothed, the remote placed straight. The printer on the small desk warmed and pushed out a blank page. The smell of toner hung like cold dust. I touched the page, and it left a faint mark on my finger that looked like proof I existed. I brewed tea and set our 2 mugs closer than usual, because closeness can be staged if you have the right props. I wrote a message to Caleb that said the tattoo was a joke about history and made me lighter. I said we should post a nice photo so people do not spin stories. The message showed delivered and then nothing. Silence can be a kind of plan. I rolled my sleeve down and practiced an explanation for Nora, for Elaine, for the neighbor if he asked. I said out loud that love is a big room, that present love grows stronger when past love is named. The room did not argue. It never argues when I speak alone. I took out the trash and saw our cars, his parked nose out toward the street, mine toward the wall. I told myself that meant nothing. Staging is not the same as running. I came back in and lined up 2 pairs of shoes near the mat, his tidy pair and my bright pair. You can draw a picture with small objects. People will read what the picture tells them to read. The wall clock hummed like a patient teacher. I sat on the stool and ran my thumb over the wrapped bandage on my arm. The skin felt hot, the way truth feels when you show it too fast. I told myself truth must be shown. People hate it at first and then they clap. It is always like that. My phone buzzed once. A text preview from unknown flashed and vanished before I could read it. The screen returned to black, and my face looked back at me, small and practical. I set the phone face down and went to the sink. I filled his mug with water so it would not look empty. I stood and listened to the house breathe. The open-plan office glowed with soft light and small sounds. I like how the glass shows my shape, so I can fix it. I wore a neat blouse and a cardigan that hid the text when I moved. I told myself I would control the story while answering calls and smiling like a sign. At 10:05, an invite slid into my calendar. Quick word at 10:30 from Graham. I typed yes with a bright emoji. I built my speech while printing labels. Off hours are off limits. The photo was cropped badly. The phrase is art. At 10:30, I stepped into the glass room. Graham asked how I was. I said focused and professional. He asked if I knew a tagged studio photo was circulating with a clear view of the line. I said yes and called it personal art. He said the office serves families who come in with worries and optics matter. I said the ink is a metaphor for closure, not a message to my husband. He asked me to keep post low and avoid captions that invite drama. I said I would consider it, and that the internet hates women who speak plainly. He thanked me for being calm. I left the room feeling like I passed a test, because no form was handed to me. At my desk, a coworker passed and muttered yikes in a friendly tone that is not friendly. I laughed and called the tattoo grown-up humor. I posted a throwback coffee photo to bury the studio tag. Hearts came slow, like people saving their breath. I texted Caleb that the office loved me, and his silence made me look guilty. I said he should post a normal photo so people calmed down. The dots did not appear. The empty space felt wide, like a hall you must cross alone. At lunch, I walked to the pharmacy for bandage wrap and mints. Caleb met me because I asked. The lights in there are too honest, like the truth is hung from the ceiling. He asked which days I could handle Nora's pickup this week. I said logistics were not love. He said logistics make children feel safe. I said my art makes me honest, and honesty makes love strong. He said love is care, not stunts. His phone lit with a call labeled private. He stepped outside, put on headphones, and paced under the awning. His mouth moved slow and even, the way a verdict moves when it knows the end. I watched through the glass like a person watching a silent film and writing in the blanks. He came back and asked if I had what I needed. I said I needed him to say he trusted me. He said, "Trust follows facts." I said facts follow stories. He paid for the bandage and mints, and his receipt made a small flag when the cashier handed it to him. He folded it once and put it in his wallet. He said we would keep our voices low for Nora. Low voices can sound like rules. On my way out, Mr. Hobbs stood near the magazine rack, reading a garden article, like it contained secrets about people. He asked if we were okay. I said we were thriving and made the word huge so it could fill the aisle. He nodded and studied roses as if thorns could become numbers. Back at the office, I typed shipping updates and printed labels. The printer in our corner worked hard, and its noise made me feel less alone. When I reached home after shifts, the house smelled faintly of toner, like paper breathing at night. The small printer on our desk warmed and slid a blank page into the tray again. I lifted it and held it to the light, as if words might be hiding in the fibers. On the dining table, Caleb's laptop showed a spreadsheet with initials and dates arranged in neat lines. As I stepped closer to read, the window minimized in a blink. He came from the hall and asked me not to use his computer. I said I was just passing by. He said he was keeping track so he would not forget. I said love does not need a ledger. He said calm does. The sentence hung there like a thin shelf. A reminder flashed on his phone and vanished. Meeting. Personal. Another block appeared and dimmed. Downtown 1340. I said he was making mystery for no reason. He said he was being careful. I said careful and love are not the same. He said care is sometimes quiet. We stood there, and the house seemed to listen like it was grading us. I tried to shape the air. I moved the 2 mugs closer on the counter and took a picture with a soft filter. I posted it with the caption teamwork. The comments were slim and cautious, like people not wanting to walk on thin ice. Mara sent, "Brave ink, ignore haters." Elaine did not reply to my cheerful check-in about Nora's bedtime. Silence drew lines around my words and made them look smaller. I started dinner and told myself seasoning is a kind of speech. When I passed the stairwell with a basket of laundry, footsteps paused on the landing above. A faint beep cut off, the sound a recording app makes when it stops. I looked up. Caleb stood by the guest room with his phone in his hand. I asked if he was recording me. He said he was recording himself so he could keep his line steady. I said lines for what? He said for staying calm. I said, calm can be a mask. He said a mask can be a seatbelt. The guest room door eased almost shut. Nora called on video with Elaine, who asked if we were ready for Friday. I said we were excited. Nora asked about the sticker on my arm. I said it was a grown-up bandage. She asked if the words under it were a secret. I said words are sometimes art for adults. She asked if the art hurt. I said only a little. Elaine said routine helps children sleep. The call ended with a polite wave. The wall planner looked different in the evening. A thin red circle had appeared around Friday, as if someone had drawn a ring around a target. I wrote family dinner next to it with a small heart. If I put a heart on a line, maybe people would follow it. I smoothed the paper with my palm. The pencil marks felt like a path. In the study, Caleb's laptop woke for a moment. A tiny bubble appeared in the corner. File uploaded successfully. The screen went dark again. I stood still and thought about the word upload. It sounds like lifting something heavy onto a shelf where it cannot be knocked down. I poured water into both mugs so they would not look abandoned and lined them back on opposite counters, the honest picture now that the filter had failed. When we sat to eat, I told him the ink was a frame around grief and that frames help you hang heavy things. He said our house was already hung, and drilling more holes made the walls weak. I said walls are there to hold. He said walls can fall. His voice was even, flat, like a level tool. We ate in small bites. After dishes, he stacked mail into 2 piles and flipped one stack over. The sound was clean and neat. He put one pile in a drawer, closed it, then opened it again, and placed a thin envelope inside with care. He closed the drawer. It clicked like a quiet yes. I set my phone on the counter and practiced another explanation for Saturday, for the rooftop, for anyone who asked. I said the line was a mirror for culture, not a map for my marriage. I said my choices were brave. I said people who reject art are afraid of feeling too much. I said many sentences. They sounded strong when I said them fast. The house did its small things. The fridge hummed, the printer tray settled. My sleeve tugged against fresh skin. I told myself I was still steering meaning, and meaning steers memory, and memory steers love. I told myself 3 times, like a charm, while the room stayed bright and did not nod. I decided the story of the ink needed a brighter frame. Mina's friends had a small mixer on a rooftop, and she said the view made every choice look glamorous. I put on a clean dress with sleeves that could slide up and down. I told myself I would sell the line as art and closure, and people would clap because people prefer a plot with a confident narrator. The elevator opened to warm music and a city that glittered like a bowl of pins. Mina hugged me and said the night was mine if I wanted it. I said there was nothing to win, only context to add. She laughed and said I always knew my angles. I lifted my sleeve a little and showed the ink for 1 second, just a wink. A few friends gasped and then grinned. I said it was a performance about history, not a diary entry. The words sounded smooth because the wind helped. Caleb stood near a row of plants with Silas from his office. They looked out at the traffic as if the road could answer them. I walked over and said we should take a couple's photo. Caleb said later. I said later was a moving target and the camera was here now. He said we would keep things simple. Silas nodded at me kindly and then watched the horizon like it had business hours. A chant rose from the main table. People called my name and tapped their glasses with a rhythm that asked for a leader. I lifted my own glass, because first is a safe position for me. I said, art is truth with a frame, and jokes are breath when rooms get tight. I said love is a big room, and gratitude for history can live inside it. I said the line on my arm was not a contract, just a way to turn grief into design. Phones went up like flowers. A camera flash popped white and fast. It caught my blush, the glass, the city, and the crowd that loved a moment more than a person. I felt the light like a warm net. Someone near the DJ started a recording. I saw the red dot blink. I said the ink was a conversation piece, and the conversation was about how adults handle memory. I laughed at the right places so people would know it was safe to laugh. Laughter came quick and then lingered like foam. A woman I did not know said the line was savage in a good way. I said brave, not savage, because brave fits better on a plaque. I checked my phone under the table edge. A direct message from Rowan sat there, short and hard. He wrote that he did not want to be involved in domestic drama. He wrote that the studio was for art, not for couple fights. I wrote back that there was no fight, just a festival of ideas. He did not reply. I slid the phone away and told myself the origin of the line belonged to me now. I found Caleb again and said the room loved my take, which meant the city understood. He said claps were not care. I said claps are a kind of care. He said the words I chose carried weight. I said words only weigh what the crowd allows. He said we would leave soon. I said we could stop by the club patio first, because Mina begged me to show my face. He said we had already shown enough faces. I said we needed one clean clip for context. On the club smoking patio, the air smelled sweet and sharp. A friend lifted a phone and asked for a context video so the internet would behave. I repeated my talking points in a soft voice. Design, frame, closure, big room, brave truth. People laughed at the beats I set out for them. Another flash went off and turned the smoke into a curtain. I said this would calm the story. Caleb stood by the exit with his hands in his pockets, like he was holding something fragile inside them. We left early anyway. The parking garage air felt like dust and old paper. A thin, bitter smell floated from the corner, a toner note that reminded me of late-night copy rooms. Caleb opened the trunk to put his jacket inside. A clipboard lay there, the top sheet showing one word in clean type. Statement. I asked if he was writing speeches. He said notes kept the peace. I said notes were knives with paper handles. He closed the trunk with a careful hand. His car was parked nose out, pointed toward the open ramp. Mine faced the wall and the yellow paint that had chipped into flakes. He removed a tiny USB stick from the console, tore a bit of tape, wrote that day's date, and slid it under a folder labeled taxes in the side pocket. I said he was building a museum of cold things. He said he was making sure the heat didn't burn the house down. I said the house was fine. He said the house would be fine if we stayed steady. On the drive home, my phone buzzed once. An unknown number flashed, and then died before I could read it. The sound left a bright ring in the car that faded slowly. I told myself wrong numbers exist, and also people who hang up when they lose their nerve. I looked at the ink on my arm and told it to sit still under my sleeve and behave. At home, I posted a group photo from the rooftop and wrote a caption about grown-up humor and art literacy. The hearts came slow and careful. Mina sent 3 fire emojis and a heart. Elaine did not comment. Mr. Hobb liked the photo without saying anything. Silas followed me, which felt like a neutral witness stepping closer to look at a painting without touching the rope. In the study later, Caleb's laptop sat open. A spreadsheet filled the screen with initials and dates, neat as fence posts. When I leaned to read them, the window minimized. He slid his chair under the desk and said we would talk when the room was quiet. I said I was quiet now. He said volume was not the measure. My sleeve pulled against tender skin, and I wanted to call it devotion so it would sound noble. His phone blinked with a reminder and went dark. Downtown, 16:05. I said he was being mysterious. He said he was being careful. I said, careful people never change the world. He said we only needed to protect our small corner of it. He washed 2 glasses and set them to dry, one at each end of the rack like they were posts in a gate. Family dinner felt like a chance to turn the tide with manners and soft light. We met at a family restaurant with paper menus and a birthday song happening 3 tables away. I chose a sweater that made the ink easy to cover, but easy to show if I needed it. I told myself I would call the line a joke about history and get Caleb to laugh in front of everyone. Laughter is social glue. I know that as well as any bartender or pastor. Elaine arrived first and hugged Nora, then Caleb. She gave me a polite nod that felt like a fence post. Mara slid in late with bright earrings and said I should sell the ink as bravery. I said I would sell it as education. The server brought water in tall glasses. The table was long enough to be a small road. I stood and raised my glass. I said, families should love the truth, even when truth wears new clothes. I said the tattoo was a joke about how stories grow. I said our house was strong, and adults can hold big ideas. Elaine kept her glass on the table. She asked how Nora was sleeping with the new routine. I said she sleeps fine when lights are warm. Elaine said children read rooms before they read books. I said our room was bright. She touched the edge of her napkin like it was a document. Nora pointed at my sleeve and asked if the sticker was still on my arm. I said it was a grown-up bandage. She asked if the words under it were a secret. I said they were art for adults. She asked why the art said I loved someone the most who was not Uncle Caleb. Forks paused over plates. I laughed and said it was a metaphor. She asked if metaphors hurt people. I said hurt is a choice. She asked whose choice. I said sometimes it is shared. Caleb said routines help. Elaine said peace is built with small steps, not with spotlights. The birthday song at the other table felt too loud. I tried to spin the room back to me. I said the line honored history, the way you hang an old photo, because it teaches you to value the present. A cousin asked if a photo that said the most still belonged on the wall. I said the phrase was rhetorical and part of the concept. Caleb paid the check without commentary. The paper folder slid away like a quiet decision. I said we should walk to the park for air. No one argued. We left in a line that did not feel like a family. At the playground, the swings creaked like an old chair. Nora asked if art can cut people even if it looks pretty. I said people choose whether to bleed. She said sometimes they do not. She slid down the slide with her shoulders tight. Elaine watched her like a calm lighthouse. I smiled at strangers to prove I was kind. Back home, the stairwell felt narrow, like a throat that didn't want to swallow. I carried a bag with milk and dish soap because errands can disguise a night. Halfway up, footsteps paused on the landing above me. A faint beep cut off, that quick sound a recording app makes when it stops. I looked up. Caleb stood near the guest room with his phone in his hand. I asked if he was recording me again. He said he was recording himself to practice staying calm. I said, calm is a costume for anger. He said costumes can be safety in a storm. He stepped into the guest room. The door eased, almost closed. I moved to the kitchen and set 2 mugs on opposite counters. Pretending they were close had started to look like a bad joke. I said we should take a photo together and make a gentle caption about art literacy. He said we would be respectful and clear, not performative. I said clarity can feel like punishment. He said boundaries are care when rooms go loud. I said he loved rules more than people. He said rules protect people from words that move like knives. His voice stayed level. I touched his laptop lid with 2 fingers. The screen woke and showed a clean desktop. 2 new folders sat at the top like teeth, Archive A and Archive B. He came from the hall and closed the lid gently, not fast, just final. I said, archiving life is cold. He said, saving truth is warmth that lasts. I said, warmth is soft. He said, soft catches fire. The exchange felt like 2 trains passing on different tracks. The wall planner had changed again. A heavy red circle wrapped Friday like a belt. Next to it, a pencil note had appeared. Downtown, 10:15. I did not see him write it, but it was there as if it had always been there. I wrote family dinner again under the circle and added a small heart. The heart looked like a sticker that would not stick. I took Nora to the supermarket for juice boxes. At the checkout, a neighbor I half knew asked if we were happy. I said we were thriving and made the word huge. The scanner beeped in a flat rhythm. Nora asked if words on skin are promises. I said words are art. She asked if art makes promises by accident. I said adults know the difference. She stared at the belt like it was teaching her. On the way back, Mr. Hobbs stood by the mailboxes flipping envelopes and not reading them. He looked up once and then away. My bag cut into my fingers. The stairwell air smelled faintly of paper and dust. Inside, the pause returned like a punctuation mark. Footsteps stilled above me. The faint beep stopped again. I reached the landing as Caleb slid his phone into his pocket and moved toward the study. I followed because following felt like courage. He opened a narrow drawer, placed something inside, and turned a small key. The lock clicked with a clean sound that felt like a period at the end of a sentence. On his screen, tabs flashed and hid. Storage options, delivery tracking, notary near me. A small bubble appeared and vanished. File uploaded successfully. I said he was turning our life into a filing cabinet. He said, order keeps people safe from stories that change when the wind changes. I said stories are alive. He said living things need fences. I set my palms on the cool counter and pretended it was a fence I could climb. I posted a photo of the 2 mugs, far apart, captioned Finding Rhythm. The hearts came slow. Mara texted that she loved me, but would not argue with Elaine online. Elaine texted Nora's schedule and a simple smile that looked like a line drawn with a ruler. I told myself tomorrow I would write the perfect caption that explained everything. I told myself captions are bridges. The house listened and did not agree. I booked a small conference nook at a co-working space by the river and sent Caleb a shared invite. I wrote that we should talk like adults and reset. He arrived on time with that steady posture that slows a room. I placed his favorite pastry on the table and called it a peace sign. He thanked me and asked which days I could take Nora this week. I said logistics were not love. He said children walk on logistics when feelings slide. The air handler hummed like a careful teacher. I said we should take a new photo and tell people we were fine. He said posts were not a plan. I said image was part of care. He said care was steps we kept. On the chair beside him lay a clipboard with a page that showed one word at the top, statement. I leaned to read more. He moved the board a little, not fast, just away. I asked if he was writing speeches. He said notes helped him avoid words he could not take back. I said notes were knives with paper handles. He said knives were loud. He was building calm. We walked to the pharmacy because I needed bandage wrap. The lights there were too honest. His phone lit with a call labeled private. He stepped outside, put on headphones, and paced under the awning with that slow mouth I now knew well. I told myself it was Silas about schedules. I also told myself it was a practice run for leaving. When he came back, he asked if I had what I needed. I said I needed him to say he trusted me. He said trust followed facts. I said facts followed stories. He paid for the wrap and reminded me we would keep our voices low for Nora. In the parking garage, he opened his trunk to slide his bag inside. 3 neat binders sat there in a row. Home, auto, bank. Clear sleeves caught the dim light. A single USB had a strip of tape with today's date. The small unfamiliar key on his ring flashed like a tiny blade. I asked what it opened. He said it opened what needed opening. I called it cryptic. He said it was precise. His car waited nose out, pointed toward the street, mine faced paint and wall. At home, his laptop woke. Tabs flashed and hid, storage options, delivery tracking, notary near me. A small bubble slid across the corner. File uploaded successfully. He slid open a narrow drawer, placed something inside, and turned the small key. The lock clicked with a clean note that felt like a period. I tried another angle. I said I might fall apart if the distance kept going. I said food tasted like paper and sleep would not come. He said threats were not a path. He said if I was unwell, he would drive me to the doctor or ask Elaine to sit with Nora. He said fear would not steer our home. I said his mother was running him like a file. He said routine was not a whip. It was a rail. We ate dinner with quiet hands. Nora talked about bridges made from paper and straws. I reached for his wrist so the table would look soft. He moved his hand away gently and asked Nora about glue choices. After dishes, the shredder hummed for 3 slow seconds in the study and then went still. He stood by the wall planner. A reminder glowed and dimmed on his phone. Downtown 1525. The digits felt like pebbles falling down a well. I followed him to the kitchen. I said we needed a weekend reset, a short trip, a fresh set of photos. He said we would keep things steady and follow routines. I said steady was a costume for distance. He said distance was a boundary when rooms went loud. I said I could fix this if he would play along. He said he would handle it properly. He said the word like a lever pulled all the way down. I said properly was a slogan for people who hide. He said properly was protection. He turned off the light. The dark nodded for him. I chose marble and echo because bright places make people kind. I went to the office tower lobby at lunch and stood near the directory screens. Footsteps made a pattern that sounded like rules. I rehearsed a soft speech about art, closure, and how ink is just a frame around history. I told myself if I reached for his hand here, he would remember the team we used to be. Silas entered first and saw me. He asked if I was meeting Caleb. I said yes, and that we would clear the air. He nodded and stood by security like a quiet witness. Caleb appeared a minute later with his bag strapped straight and his face calm. He stopped 3 paces away. I stepped forward and said we should be normal and tell the room we were fine. He said we would follow the plan. I asked what plan. He said the plan that keeps things clear and civil. From a bench near a planter, a man in a neutral jacket stood and said my full name. The sound carried on the marble, like a bell that belonged to the building. He asked if I was that person. I said yes because it was my name. He placed a stack into my hands and said the delivery was complete. The weight of paper changed how my shoulders sat. The top page said, petition. The lines were clean and calm. Temporary orders spoke about use of the residence and access rules. There were limits on accounts to prevent sudden moves. A section required written-only communication for any shared logistics and no scenes at handoffs. A brief demand asked me to remove posts that displayed Caleb's identity beside the humiliating tattoo, with a note to preserve copies elsewhere. A first date sat close, like a stone a person could trip on. The words were not angry, they were arranged like furniture you could not move. I told Caleb we could fix this at home with tea and careful voices. He said we would follow the orders. I said he was choosing strangers over his wife. He said he was choosing stability. I said he was punishing me for art. He said public repair begins with rules when harm started in public. He thanked the server for being professional. The man nodded and stepped back to the bench. People near us looked at their screens with sudden care, as if their phones had become more interesting than a woman holding papers. My phone buzzed. Elaine texted that routine helps Nora and that we should follow the schedule. Mara wrote that she loved me but could not take sides. I read both lines twice and found no door out. I said the tattoo was a metaphor and not a promise. He said the papers spoke for themselves. I said I was scared. He said we would communicate in writing from now on. His voice stayed level, like a hallway without doors. The elevator bell chimed. Silas held the door with one hand and watched the floor. Caleb took a step toward the elevator and paused. I lifted my hand as if asking to cross a street. I said we were still us. He said we would follow the schedule. He said, "Take care." The bell chimed again, patient and final. Security asked softly if I was okay. I said I was fine because fine fits any public space. The word temporary near the top of the order looked like a brand. The marble reflected me smaller than I wanted to be. Caleb stepped into the elevator. Silas released the door. The chrome line slid to the center with a quiet seal. The air felt bright and thin. The stack rested in my hands. The result had already started. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next story. Write in the comments from which city you are watching.